Believe me, as a married mother of 4, marriage is not all it's cracked up to be.
I felt very shocked when I read that. I was actually physically shaking when I read it. The woman that wrote the letter, who was in quite a responsible position in the department, answering matters of family law and so on, made no attempt to veil her personal bias.
So this public servant offered a whole lot of personal comments.
Oh, definitely, of which I found extremely offensive to me as an individual, to Jennifer and myself as a couple. It was just outrageous.
The couple decided to marry despite the email, preferring instead to have the validity of their marriage tested in the family court. They hired lawyer Rachel Wallbank, herself a transsexual and expert on the condition. Rachel Wallbank decided to fight the case against the Attorney General's Department on the basis of science.
We were able to take the court through a journey, really, a scientific journey that firstly dealt with the kind of diversity in human sexual formation arising from chromosomal diversity as well as bodily formation diversity, to the point where we could deal with evidence concerning brain sex differentiation in the human being.
The court was presented with several scientific studies suggesting a biological basis to transsexualism. A Dutch study looking at the hypothalamus of 6 male to female transsexuals found they had similar features to female brains. They examined the part of the brain essential for sexual behaviour and found it was the same size in female transsexuals as it was in other women. In men, this region of the brain, known as the bared nucleus of the stria terminalis, is much larger. The studies suggested that gender identity develops as a result of an interaction between the developing brain and sex hormones. Other studies supported this theory.
In view of all the evidence that I had, there's just no reason to see how it could possibly have been nurture. The things that characterise transsexuals are as much biological as mental, and that's terribly important for the law. So the point I was trying to make in the judgment is that the brain sex theory, the biological-based theory, doesn't seem to have any competitors in terms of explanation. Nobody else is saying, oh, there's this other plausible explanation.
In his judgment, Justice Chisholm said it would be wrong to suggest that a person's sex depends on any single factor, such as chromosomes or genitalia. Equally, he said it would be wrong to say it can be determined solely by a person's psychological state or their brain sex.
It's not a preference, but it's a sense of who they are that for them seems to be so fundamental that it's not an opinion and that it couldn't be changed. It's just an absolute sense, like a sense perhaps that life's worth living or that one is alive or that you're sitting on a chair.
Justice Chisholm also considered Kevin's social standing, the fact he'd had gender surgery and his success in being treated as an infertile man in a Sydney hospital's IVF program. Justice Chisholm determined that Kevin, at the time of his marriage, was a man, and therefore the marriage was legal. He said in his judgment,
"It's difficult to imagine how there could be a stronger case on the facts for a person with female chromosomes, born with female genitalia and chromosomes, to be treated as a man. I refer to the extensive evidence relating to his self-perception, appearance, medical history, and functioning in society."
The Attorney General's Department appealed Justice Chisholm's decision, and the case went to the full bench of the family court. It also decided in Kevin's favour. Kevin and Jennifer are now happily married, living with their 2 children in suburban Sydney.
That's all we want, is to blend in and get on with our lives. We don't want to go out saying, hey, we're different, hey, look at us, hey, treat us with a special kind of, I don't know what, you know. We're just like everyone else. We work, we pay our taxes, we care for our family. What more do you want?
Far more controversial than adults changing gender is the issue of adolescents wanting to. Children seeking medical treatment must go through the family court. This follows a controversial case last year in Melbourne, where Alex, a 13-year-old born into a girl's body, wanted to become a boy.
A teenage girl has become the first child in Australia to be given legal approval for a sex change on psychiatric grounds. The teenager, known only as Alex, will be allowed to start irreversible hormone treatment when she turns 16, but the court decision has divided medical authorities.
Alex was a very distressed adolescent who was extremely depressed because of his gender dysphoria, was quite suicidal. And certainly evidence suggests that he is much happier now, having commenced treatment.
The court decided the teenager could take the chosen name of Alex and should be referred to as a male. It also agreed to the contraceptive pill to suppress menstruation.
Essentially, I think we saw a very conservative judgment. This was a complex issue. This is a young person already living in a male role. I think what was very positive about it is that it respected the young person's decision to do that and supported that choice, which had already been made. In terms of biological interventions, it was a very conservative approach, using only reversible interventions.
At 16, testosterone will be considered to begin his physical transition. The court found the teenager's desire to be male was most likely due to biology and psychosocial factors. The judge referred to the expert medical evidence in Kevin's case.
Nobody chooses to go through this route. It's not something you'd choose for yourself or you'd wish on your worst enemy type of attitude. It's not a walk in the park. It's not simple or easy. And it involves a lot of medical intervention.
Tell me what the good things about being a girl are. What do you like about being a girl?
Dr. Louise Newman specialises in child and adolescent gender issues. She currently has 4 adolescents wanting treatment to change gender. To do so, they will have to get permission from the family court. A 13-year-old who says she is a girl born into a boy's body recently went before the family court in New South Wales, seeking the first stage of treatment.
In this case, we're actually seeking to use puberty-blocking hormones, which will delay pubertal change in this young person, on the grounds that they'll be distressed by that and probably not able to tolerate that, and that it's very clear for them that those changes are not going to be acceptable.
Lawyer Rachel Wallbang presented medical evidence in court that puberty blockers were reversible and could save the child from self-harm or, worse, suicide. Not everyone agrees with the view that adolescents should receive puberty blockers for this condition. Many religious organisations are opposed to any form of medical intervention, and some doctors question the long-term effects of puberty blockers.
I don't think we really know the long-term effects on bone density of missing out on a couple of years of the accumulation of bone density.
All the medical evidence, all the lived experience of people with transsexualism like myself, however, and all of the post-treatment studies of children indicate that the earlier the children with transsexualism receive this treatment, the better their lives are, the happier they are, and the more they can actually live out a useful and fulfilling life.
What about the critics who say adolescence is a time of turmoil anyway? They could grow out of it, they could change their mind, they could in fact simply be gay. What do you say to those critics?
The treatment of transsexualism in childhood is a very conservative process. Usually years go by with the child under the microscope before